Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 23 of Down the Pub podcast, brought to you by Wolves of Westminster. I am your host, Peter Simpson. I run the Haryan Gláeddyv channel and I'm a contributor to Wolves of Westminster. And I'm just joined by the editor of Wolves of Westminster today, Patrick Timms. Hello, Patrick.
Good evening, sir. And what a day, what a week this week.
Well, again, I'm fed up of making the joke now. Lots of interesting things happened, so it'll be the first thing you talk about at the pub rather than the last. So, Iran. I think that's the big one. I mean, we've been trying to catch up both our perspectives pre-recording, but to give context to everyone, I mean, the operation name's just great. The White House have decided to call it Operation Epic Fury. It's a joint attack with Israel. Obviously, they're a big alliance to make decapitation strikes, as they are known, on Iran. I believe the first day they knocked out 88 high-ranking members of the Tehran regime, including the Ayatollah. I can never pronounce his name. Calamé, I think it is. And
I think it's something like that.
Yes, yeah, something like that. So took out him, and then days later they had another meeting. Right, who we're going to replace him with? Oh, another decapitation strike. And what's the end game here? It seems to be everything up to but not including nation building. They are reliant on the people rising up, which is an interesting tactic, if very American, but it doesn't tend to yield results. This is what I'd say there.
Well, it's more a case of saying that you can't guarantee what those results. So there'll be some results, but you can't guarantee what they're going to be. They might not even go in the right direction, as far as you're concerned. So I suppose it shows an air of, well, desperation almost. That things will come right. As long as we just. Yeah, I mean, you know what it reminds me of is that old film, Team America.
I have been thinking about the theme song, which I won't sing on this show, mainly because there's swear words in it.
America. Yeah. I never really did that. But yes, it certainly does seem as though Trump said this, didn't he? He said, "Look, somebody had to do it, so in the end, I did it."
Yeah, which there's not particular world love for Iran. Nobody really wants them to have nuclear weapons either, and it is one of those things where let the dust settle from Epic Fury, from the B-52 bombers or whatever they sent. People will probably go, "Oh, thank God for that," in a few months, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was a good idea to do it now, and it's. I'm going out on a limb and saying it's probably a bad idea to not have a plan to actually at least pick a winner, because at least with Venezuela, when they swapped out Maduro there, they got his deputy in, who they did make a deal with, and Venezuela appears to be stable after that. Whereas with Iran, I mean, okay, it wasn't stable to begin with, to be fair, but the rest of the Middle East is a little bit more unstable now, given the fact that they basically the remaining generals have clearly lashed out and are just kind of picking targets all around. That does include our bases on Cyprus. I believe the drones actually came from Lebanon, but that is a satellite. Well, Hezbollah is a satellite faction, I should say, of Iran and the regime there. So, and a big problem we had there was we just weren't prepared for it, which is going to bring us on to the next big topic, if that's geopolitics done with.
Well, there we are. You had the attacks on Israel as well, which has further destabilized the Middle East. It's worth, and also from Israel.
Oh yeah.
So that is just another area where these kinds of events, either in geopolitical terms or indeed in regional terms, they can't take place in isolation from one another. They're always going to be affecting one another, and that's what it would seem. I see from news coverage today that the Prime Minister has said he stands by his decision. He does not want us to join in with the attacks that were launched by the US and Israel on Iran
Yeah.
the weekend, and he says talks will be the best way forward. Well, you might have thought he was a lawyer.
Well, funny that. I mean, it's worth going into what the position of Starmer actually, or at least what the cabinet's position was, which was they were told about these attacks 17 days before they happened. That's when they were first told by the White House or the Pentagon, maybe, we are going to be attacking Iran. Can we please use your bases, as there will be retaliation strikes? Obviously, because we know what Iran are like. And basically, Starmer was largely on board with it, from what I understand. There's a great piece in today's or on the Spectator today, I should say. It's probably in the Spectator tomorrow. Well, it will be. It's the leading article, I think, about effectively Keir Starmer and even Lord Hermer, because people thought it was Lord Hermer's fault because he's the human rights lawyer, man. They basically thought that they did what they usually do, which was, oh, international law, we can't get involved. We can only get involved once we're struck, things like that. No, they actually found that they can prepare and have defensive capabilities. Obviously, it's offensive with a fighter jet, but if they're taking down drones, it's considered defensive. So they didn't actually have a problem. It was a rebellion in the cabinet by Ed Miliband, Rachel Reeves, Yvette Cooper, and I think even Shabana Mahmood, with Ed Miliband being the main problem. Now, you may be thinking, why is Ed Miliband involved? Well, Ed Miliband is Energy Secretary. Not only that, he used to be Labour leader, and so obviously he's a very senior Labour politician, so his input actually does matter. And also, Energy Minister, we're talking about Gulf states, which, we get 25% or something of our liquid natural gas from there. So it's quite important, and that's why he had a say here, which obviously ended up being, we don't like Trump, we don't want to help him, we don't agree with the National Security Council here, unless we can guarantee it's defensive of our bases and our citizens who live in Abu Dhabi, Dubai. Something like 300,000 British nationals are in and around the Middle East. So that's why we ended up delaying 48 hours, which has monumentally, and I will say it this way because it's how it was reported, pissed all our allies off, including France, including Germany, especially America, especially Israel, and especially the Middle East, and especially Cyprus, because we should have been prepared for the base attacks on Cyprus, because any of those missiles or drones go wrong, it hits Limassol or something, that's a lot of injured Greek Cypriots and even Russians, because quite a few Russians live in Greek Cyprus for some reason. So...
Well, yeah, it's quite a mess of a situation, and by all accounts, I do not envy the position of the Prime Minister. But what I would say is that it would appear as though, well, when his cabinet can't agree with each other, one wonders whether or not this is any different from the fact that he can't even agree with himself. So, you see, there is no unity of opinion on this one. And again, I do understand it, because nobody knows. The one wrong move, and I can guarantee that is the advice that he will have been given by the Ministry of Defence, by the Cabinet Secretary, most likely, the new one. And all of that civil service is going to happen in that way. And I, as I say, do not envy the decision, but I think it's one of those where actually we have taken more of a Trumpian approach and just said, I'm going to do this because I want to.
Yeah, but Starmer never does that.
No, he doesn't. You're right.
Ever. He's very procedural. And again, another great Tim Shipman article about basically a retrospective on Starmerism. He is a man who thinks leading is just wearing a suit and looking serious. He doesn't really understand he has to make decisions, even snap ones like that. And I will say as well, the Defence Minister, John Healey, very on board with helping the US for obvious reasons, because there's the old mantra, there's three things that are keeping Britain afloat. One is, in terms of defence, one is the nuclear programme, obviously. I can't remember the second one, but the third one is the US is our principal ally. We outsource a lot of our defence to the US, and it's very, very useful. And we can't really get away from that until we've got our own defence up and running, which obviously the right wing have been saying we should do for some time. Tories 14 years, whatever. But it is true. We need to up our defence, and we should be spending, or the commitment is 3% or something of GDP to go toward defence. That was a Starmer policy, at least after he got in, and we don't appear to have got. Well, we're obviously not going to get to that point in the time he's had, to be fair to him, but also we've had to have France step in for our defensive capabilities because we just weren't ready. There was also news that we had a submarine in the Gulf 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that, and it's in Australia now. And again, we knew that there was going to be an intervention in the Gulf 2 weeks ago. So why was the order not sent to turn it around, put it back in the Gulf? It's in Australia. It's miles away. It'll take 2 weeks to get back. So there's just doesn't seem to be any sort of preparedness either. I don't know what's going on, to be honest with you. But
having worked close to the MOD, I will say there are a lot of people who do not talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you don't really want them to talk to each other.
Mm.
Now, to explain that, what I will say is that, for example, when there was an investigation into a certain young journalist, self-styled, which will have involved both MI5, who deal with domestic affairs, and MI6, who deal with international affairs. I mean, and probably also the Secret Services, how on earth that information got out there from a 19-year-old. This is not so good. I can tell you what happens in those meetings,
mm-hmm.
except that I can't.
Because they shoot you, yes, yeah, I see. Thank you for that.
Let's just say, when you have that many egos in the room, you're perhaps going to find yourself in a situation where there is not entirely an agreement, and this is not really individual; it's more departmental. And this does go on within the MOD. And then, of course, you have the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And whose turn it is? Is it the RAF? Is it the Navy? Is it the Army?
Right, yeah.
You see, it's often difficult to know what exactly it is that the MOD wants, because it doesn't know what it wants. One of the prime functions of the Secretary of State for Defence is to tell it what it wants. And you would think that being soldiers, they'd be rather used to being told what it was, at least, that they were supposed to want, but apparently that is actually less easy to do, because by the time you got to that rank, you're not very used to being told the word no.
No, I'm sure. Well, I mean, there's some people I know who are ex-army who don't like being shouted at all, and would make trouble when they were in the army. But there you go.
So it's just an interesting picture, this one. I mean, it's difficult trying to get to. And to be fair, just to be clear, I'm not going to have a go at an ex-employer. Really, I mean, at the end of the day, You think this is different in any other country? No, it isn't. No,
it won't be. Other countries just seem more prepared and more willing almost straight away to say, we are backing America. Canada and Australia managed it. They're not even involved. Germany managed it. France managed to say, yeah, we're upping our nuclear capability. Support is where it's needed. And we took 48 hours of delay because, unfortunately, we have a lot of human rights lawyers that make this procedural a bit too seriously. Whereas, if you had Boris Johnson there, he'd probably be right behind them, for example. I think any Tory leader would, to be fair. I can't see any of them delaying, even Theresa May. So, but there you go. I mean, no one should be shocked about that being the way the Starmer government went. It's just a shame that it's put our relationship with America and other allies in tatters. The Middle East are not happy, obviously, because there were probably lives that could have been saved if we were 48 hours quicker, is the way they see it. Despite the fact we've actually... sorry, just one more thing. We've actually done more militarily to help than other countries as well. but we lost all credit because of how it looks. So
well, it was the same in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Our initial response was the fastest,
Yeah,
and probably the most effective, and with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, who took credit for that. But I remember there was a dramatization of when Margaret Thatcher ordered the sinking of the, what was it, the
the Belgrano, yeah.
And assuming that it is at least relatively historically accurate, that dramatization, as she said, sink it. Now, they don't make them like that anymore.
No. Well, it is quite a funny one because there are certainly some Argentinians that try and claim it's a war crime, but I think even the captain of the vessel just said, "Yeah, I'd probably sink it," or an Argentinian admiral or something. They saw it as fair game, I suppose is the way to put it. So, but no, don't make them like that here. But obviously, Trump, as you say, what did he say? Well, someone had to do it, so I did. And here are our objectives: decapitate the regime and hope the people rise up. And well, there's even news that possibly Kurds could come in to see what they can do, to put it politely. But this is the problem if you don't have a long-term plan.
It makes it sound like a consultancy service, doesn't it?
Well, I know, but I think be a very bloody one, I think, with that. But I think that was the big news anyway, and I think we've caught up with that one particularly. But Labour have other geopolitical problems, which is that there've been 3 arrests of either Labour aides or was it the husband of a Labour MP has been arrested over China spying, which is not the first spying scandal from Labour in this Parliament. And somehow I think it won't be the last, but let's not get too hubristic about it. There just seems to be China spies everywhere, but especially in Labour, where they keep finding them. So I don't think anyone's even tried to call it a witch hunt because they keep finding so many. But there we go.
Well, I remember hearing a story about, of course, the former Prime Minister now Lord Cameron, that apparently he was approached while he was somewhere around university age, and was being courted by, who was it? Was it China? Was it Russia? I can't remember. That they were trying to recruit him, and it would seem that he did not engage with these advances. But it would seem that it certainly does happen. I mean, you have, a kind of man who, in fairness to him, was probably always destined to be some kind of senior figure at some stage, Eton educated, got the right family, got the right connections, so it's not surprising. So what people will do is they will now look at, look, Labour, they seem to be in charge now, so what we will do is we'll work through them. It's not surprising. I don't think any different if the Lib Dems are in charge, for God's sake. I really, well, you can have a giggle at that if you like, but the reality is, it won't matter. What people will do is engage with the people who appear to be able to wield influence. And of course, that may be the case on one side of the pond, China, Russia, North Korea, etc. It will also be the case, albeit I must add for our American allies in a different manner, on the other side of the pond. So it's of no surprise to me that there is intrigue and that there are people attempting to influence one another. I don't see there's any reason to find that odd.
No, that's true. I mean, the thing is that I'm remembering all the Boris Johnson scandals. An awful lot of them were more, how do you put it, MPs being a bit too forward. Whereas in this case, it seems to be not necessarily enemy, but certainly rival countries' agents are being a bit too forward. But I mean, in this case, it's ended up with a Labour MP resigning the whip, Joni Reid, due to her husband being involved in one of these scandals, which I suppose makes sense. He is arrested, and obviously being a spouse of a Labour MP, she could, there's no reason to think she didn't know. Well, it would be fair to suspect that she may have known something about this, so it's probably worth investigating. And then when they're over, if she's found innocent, she can probably go back to being a Labour MP, assuming it gets done quick enough. But it always seems to be China, though, is my thing. It's never. When was the last Russian spy case? With Labour MPs, it's always China. Or with Labour here, anyway, it's always China.
Wow, I would hate to be sat around that dinner table. That much is certain. When the decision was made, okay, I'm going to do this. To me, call me an old cynic in politics, but it looks like hedging on this. If I do this now, I can't be accused of not having done it later. Later than I did. Yeah, so there is that. Call me an old cynic, but I can see that. But technically, according to what the establishment would consider to be the proper processes, she has probably done the right thing. So there we are. It also embarrasses the government even more, though. So sometimes you wonder whether actually was this my parting shot? Am I perhaps not coming back at all? Because parting shots in politics, they are not necessarily. I mean, sometimes they can be explosive, but not necessarily. Sometimes they are just what you leave behind. It's like, it's like taking a pin out of a grate and then just leaving it there. It is.
No, it's fair enough. Well, I mean, it is always. I mean, a lot of people still seem to think that Starmer's going as well in May. So, I mean, how much of is all this news going to be buried by that mess? Should there be one? But you never know. There's also a saying that Starmer would rather kill the Labour Party than resign. It's like that. That's also a possibility. But
that's the thing with getting into power is that you work the system to get into power. But then once you're in power, the system doesn't matter. Conventional wisdom would suggest that you should not. It's just like being window cleaner, isn't it? I'm going to climb up the ladder to get to the roof or whatever. No sensible person would kick out from under themselves the ladder that got them to where they are. But when you are in that level of power, being sensible,
and try and kick it,
no longer really a factor.
Well, he's not kicked the ladder because they can still get 80 MPs to back Wes Streeting or possibly Angela Rayner. And I mean, at this point as well, especially with the Iran thing, I didn't mention this at the time, but I may as well bring it up now. But Starmer is quite clearly still trying to get on level with the Parliamentary Labour Party. That's probably why there was a 48-hour delay, so that he's got plausible deniability of, I tried to fight Trump, but now, our own citizens are in danger in Abu Dhabi. Which is actually another thing that we didn't mention. There seems to be this really weird attitude from the media and political class that they call them tax exiles, where, these people are selfish, didn't want to pay into the British system and have moved to Dubai or wherever to basically better their lives. And one of my old teachers, actually, he put a post out there basically saying, I think it's just awful that what I'm hearing from, say, leader of the Lib Dems and elsewhere, that I'm basically told I am a bad person for having aspiration, but I feel incredibly safe in Dubai. It's a very first world country. We have constant updates on how safe we are and whether we should be taking cover in shelters and things like that. And it has very much annoyed me. And it wasn't just Ed Davey, it was other people in the media. It seems to be every other news show as well. You are a bad person if you have any sort of aspiration and left the country for that. And if you want to come back, it's going to have to cost you. It costs them anyway, by the way. I think Chris Bayliss went into detail on that. People don't know the law. You actually do have to at least make a bit of contribution for your own safe exit. But it's this whole thing of it's this whole outsourcing of morality. Taxes is now charity, according to these people, which is the opposite of classically what taxes were. Taxes used to be a necessary evil. Now, to a lot of chattering classes, it's charity, and you're a bad person if you try and avoid it anyway. Despite the fact everyone does try and avoid it every way they can. So,
well, I mean, so with that said, though, and of course this isn't really to do with taxes, I must say that I do think that this country behaved badly in respect of, for example, of those Afghani interpreters. We were not as good to them as we should have been. These are people who risked their lives and whose lives themselves are now threatened, just for having it been known that they had assisted us in our war efforts to begin with. And I will stand by that principle. So, sometimes it can come from one way or another. If we go back even further, I mean, I have the shield on my wall from from my grandfather, an operation that he was involved in during the Rhodesian Wars on the eastern border, known as Operation Thrasher. Okay, so when we talk about these kinds of military operations, as we were talking about in the first part of the program, there are pieces of history that exist from this that tell us that whatever else we are being told, actually this was real and it did happen. And for example, these Afghani interpreters, well, this was real and it happened. As to the US involvement and the involvement of other Middle Eastern states, well, everyone just has their own version of history, which is why, when I look at that shield which is mounted on the wall of my upstairs bathroom, I am prompted to, when I am extracting my own urine, I am, yeah, well, seriously.
Lovely, yeah.
Yes, yeah, well, then, because I put it there exactly where it is, because when I go for a good wee, I am staring at it, you see? And so what I'm doing is I'm reminding myself that whereas different people might decide to make their own interpretations of history, that I'm staring at my own family histories. That is what I'm staring at. Yeah. My grandfather was a Delta brat. He served in the 7th Armored Division. That's the Tank Corps, one of them. He was decorated many times.
Very nice.
Diffused minefields under sniper fire, all that kind of thing. He was a major. And this was part of it. This is part of my history, but it's also part of my family history. And so this is when we come to, when people want to tell us, as they so often do now, especially on the left, they want to rewrite history. Well, what we do then is we look at our own history, we look at the evidence of that, we look at what is there, and we say, no, you don't get to rewrite this.
No, which is why I find it a bit of a shame, because it did used to be the British spirit to go out, be aspirational, and we used to do it so well. We made entire countries out of it, and now in Abu Dhabi, there probably is a diaspora that's going to stay there forever. Especially with what I said before about what my old teacher wrote. He says, I hope to make this my home for many years. He'll probably make a family there. There's going to be, basically, a colony of expats who, most of them probably British, but maybe from other countries as well, which again, this is probably going to develop into, or possibly their own ethnicity, if you want to call it that. They did that in Australia, they did that in Canada, did that in America. These are all generated ethnicities, and maybe there'll be one in Dubai that forms in the little compounds that they all tend to live in and can easily have alcohol. But
But I was just coming on that. So, yeah, well, what did we do with America? We sent them our Puritans.
Yeah.
And look what they did with that. What did we do with Australia? We sent them our criminals, petty criminals.
And their wardens, to be fair, and the police.
But
yeah.
What did they do with that? You see?
Yeah.
All that kind of thing. Now, I will share, just before we move on, you need to, I asked my mother, it was a few Christmases ago, why did Grandad, it's obviously her dad, why did he take the family out to Rhodesia, as it then was? Because my mother was, 5, I think, at the time, and she told me that what happened basically was when the men who had gone off to fight in the war, when they came back, they had to find jobs, and they would have to find them in places like the factories and that kind of thing. But there was tension between the men who had, for whatever reason, not gone off to fight, and the ones who had. So many of these men then went off and took their families with them, went off to the colonies, as they then were. But when they were there, they wanted to be Rhodesian. You see?
Yeah.
It's not like, for example, I'm sorry to mention this, but I've done enough translations on it, when the Belgians went out to the DR Congo and,
oh yes,
let's just say when the kids went to school, the Belgians had to go first, and the, for want of a better word, natives had to go behind in the 90s. Now, that's not dissimilar to in America in say 50s, where if you were black, you had to be on the back of the bus. You were not going on the front.
Well, that's your Rosa Parks, I suppose, but yeah.
True. And a very good reference there. Not that it worked that time.
Well, not instantly, but yeah, they got it there.
But when we went out there, I'm not saying there was nothing that we did wrong. I mean, just watch Blood Diamond, the film, for a start. But at the same time, now when they went out there, my family, they went out there to become Rhodesian. You see, they were not British occupiers. They were people who, for reasons of and all the turmoil that there was in the world at the time, felt that it would be better for them to be elsewhere, but also to establish themselves as citizens of that nation. They were not occupiers. They were not what a lot of people, particularly on the left, would like to call colonialists. Were they colonists? Yes. Were they colonialists? No. And there's a difference there that I think a lot of people don't really understand. And sadly, with the passage of time, I think eventually the knowledge of what people who grew up there actually experienced will pass from the world.
Yeah.
Not too long from now. So I think it's vitally important that perspectives like this is not normally what we talk about on this channel, but I don't care in the shortest sense of the word, because when we establish our political opinions and our views and that kind of thing, we also have to look at our backgrounds, our family backgrounds, and where we've come. I've said so many times, we are what we learn, and we learn what we live, and what we live becomes our politics. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So I just sort of thought that was worth mentioning.
Oh, it's definitely worth mentioning. No, I mean, my channel goes into cultural issues too, but it's fine. But if we want to come back to politics and Westminster boring stuff,
yes,
we can. Because yes, not to take away from that monologue there, because it was very interesting. We are here to mainly talk about politics, to be fair. And while we're on about Labour, Reform have finally snagged 2 ex-Labour politicians, which we were teased for weeks. I know it kept being put off for whatever reason. Oh, things don't always come through properly. Well, we now know who they are. One of them was, I believe, Mayor of Newham, I think, was his biggest job for it's 18 years or something like that. It was quite a long time. But that's Sir Robin Wales, who kind of a bit of a classic blue Labour type, from what I can tell. Did very well in his job as a councillor and a mayor. I think even managed to freeze council tax for a few years. So that's obviously one that Reform want on board to see how that's done. So he's come on basically as advisor for, I think it's for effectively head of local government in London, which is clearly preparing for the local elections in London this year, because there's a load of council elections in May. So quite a good snag there. Obviously, we'll be under Layla Cunningham as well, who's still the mayoral candidate for 2 years' time, who is also overseeing all this. And their other snag was Clive Furness, who has been head of Newham Council for a number of years and is now the prospective candidate for mayor of Newham. So it's good to finally be able to say, look, they're not Tory 2.0. They've got these Labour types who came in and started saying things about immigration that were a bit wet, but who cares? They're nowhere near that policy. So, which is always good, and it shows it's a broad tent as well, which I've certainly, even as more on the right wing of that tent, have wanted to see that. I'm happy that Labour types have come over to broaden the appeal.
Do you think there's a risk, and of course this question will be asked every single time, as you'll well know, that it actually becomes more a case of saying, it's the thing with politics, they basically kind of follow the power.
Definitely.
They're probably going to get elected. I should be with them because then I'll get re-elected. Call me an old cynic, but I've seen it that many times that it just doesn't surprise me anymore.
That is a fair point to bring up, and once again, it's just, well, we kind of just have to trust the vetting process and what the higher ups, who the higher ups have decidedly brought on board and who they haven't, because even then, Reform have had to kick people out, especially at the council level, obviously. Well, at the parliamentary level, they did it with Rupert Lowe. So there is clearly a vetting process.
Your wording is important there. They've had to kick people out.
Yes.
Not that they did kick people out, but they had to kick people out. So it's worth making that point. What's also worth noting is that the hiring process is outsourced within Reform.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I went up to be a Brexit Party MEP in 2019. Got all the way up to Lucy Harris, who said no because she said apparently, allegedly, that she didn't think I had the social skills to be an MP. I was sort of like, well, have you met Andrew Bridgen? But yeah, well, there we are. You might want to edit this bit, but never mind. So that was, I can certainly say that they do outsource that process. But even in recent times. When I've emailed party chairman, Dr. David Bull, whose show I've been on several times, and also Richard Tice, who we met 7 years ago on the March to Leave. God knows if you remember that, but I do because I was there. No, okay, fine. Right. And both of them separately have said to me, we're not involved in the staff hiring process. So it seems that nothing really has changed since 2019, right? Mm-hmm. So in terms of who they are hiring, it doesn't seem as though senior figures such as David Bull, Richard Tice, Nigel Farage, indeed, are actually involved in it. So in terms of how much it does or doesn't mean, that does rather sort of put a bit of a cat on the pigeons.
Well, I think there's two. I would imagine, I don't know necessarily, but there's going to be political vetting and there's going to be obviously personnel vetting. I can't imagine Reform have hired people. This is probably what's been outsourced to check over social media posts and do aptitude tests and what have you. When I say vetting, I don't necessarily mean that. I mean, when you go for an interview, you usually get either, well, it's Teams usually these days, but you'll be on a call for half an hour, something like that, 15 minutes, half an hour, to basically see, are you actually a good fit? And I imagine Reform is doing that. And I would be shocked if it's not, at the very least, members of the board having some sort of oversight on that.
You may need to be shocked.
I may need to be shocked. Well, maybe they are that lazy then.
I don't think they're lazy. I think
Yeah.
if I were, looking from an organizational point of view, it's easier to separate yourself from that. Because then when it comes down to, oh, yes, but somebody selected this awful person, right, yes, but it wasn't us. This is how brutal politics is.
That is a good point. That we outsource that. Well, I will say, when Robert Jemrick came over and we heard all of a sudden, there's been various meetings, lunches and things like that. That's more what I mean. And when it comes to parliamentary types, the MPs, Andrew Rosendale was a good one who I did actually happen to meet in Gorton and Denton. But he, they were friends for ages and they knew each other. Maybe it's a sort of thing that more happens the higher up the political hierarchy you get. So parliamentary, or MPs, I should say, certainly, they clearly meet. When it comes to councillors and mayors, maybe not so much.
Perhaps you are right there. I don't know how much involvement Kelly Badenoch has in the selection of candidates. I don't know how much involvement Sir Keir Starmer has in the selection of candidates.
Yeah, I'm more referring to the defections though, because these were defections, and every time we hear about a defection, we've been talking to Farage for months. I can't imagine that not. They might overstate how often they've been talking, but I can't imagine there was never a conversation. I think that would be quite mad, especially if it's Farage introducing them. But again, maybe I need to be shocked about this, but it just doesn't make sense in my mind.
There's two things to say there. The first is it's a much smaller party for now.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
Apparently, not in terms of membership, but certainly in terms of representation within either house. And the second thing to say is that these people, they all know each other anyway.
True. That's true.
Yeah, they do. I mean, when we did a story on Diane Abbott, sadly, I think she went into a transient ischemic attack during an address launching the Zero COVID initiative, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is actually run out of her office, or at least it used to be. I texted my then MP at the time, and because I had seen this, I knew what it looked like, and I thought, my God, we're planning to do a story on this. I said, yeah, he's in a completely different party. He's a Tory. But they do all know each other. I know that. When you've spoken to enough of them, I know that. So what did I do? I texted him and just said, can you make sure she's okay? Because she didn't look okay. And we're not going to run this story if she's actually not okay. Because we're not those kinds of journalists. And so he did. He went to channels and he found that she was in fact fine. It was just a temporary thing. But they do all know each other is the point of this. And the people in the business world do as well, and therefore also the various people that Reform might be looking for, whether they are parliamentary candidates, whether they are mayoral candidates, councillor people, whether they are advisors on other elements of policy, like policing, for example. I was at a press conference where they were announcing their latest recruit on that front. They do all know each other, and it would be naive to assume otherwise.
Yeah, well, no, that's a fair point, and maybe well, that is sort of what I mean by vetting anyway. They'll kind of know each other. Reform will have an idea, or at least the higher ups, you would hope, have a sort of idea of who they want on board. But then again, we've been surprised before. Nadeem Zahawi is still one I can't. That's one I just don't defend. There's no defending that one. I do not understand it and can't come up with a story in my mind. At least with Sir Robin Wales, newer mayor, very very popular, managed to freeze council tax, for example. There's a story there I can understand with Nadim Zahawi. He was one of the worst. The best excuse I've heard for that is, well, he was vaccines minister and they're trying to shake off the whole anti-vax association they have, but I'm not convinced by that one. So
I've met him. I've met him, and he's a most impressive gentleman. As a media performer or as a after dinner speaker, something like that. He's certainly not unintelligent. He's certainly not inexperienced. And I rather think that what Reform is actually doing here, and of course this is going to be personal to you because you're with Reform, but
it's fine.
Now I don't know how much you do. Do you have one of those pepper grinders?
I have a pepper grinder, yeah.
With some pepper in it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're finished and you're done with the meal.
Yeah.
And then you're grinding the pepper.
Yes.
You say?
Yeah.
I see him as somebody a bit like that. That's what they're doing here. Or at least is what they think they're doing. They're adding some spice.
What's the spice? Well, I'm trying to work out or is the spice just, this is one you didn't expect?
Well, you're quite right to say that, because indeed, sometimes when we are cooking, we have a range of different spices. Do you have that one that's called 5 spice?
Yeah, Chinese 5 spice. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even know what that is.
No, but I have looked it up before, and I always forget. All I know is that it tastes very earthy.
Yeah, but my point is sometimes you grind the new spice on because you're not sure exactly what it's going to do to the meal. And I would get the impression from Mr. Farage that is probably what he's doing here.
Just keeping. Well, it's. I've brought him up again, so it's kept him in front of my mind. Actually, on defection talk, actually, it's worth pointing out. Lord Frost has left his position at I think it was CEO or director of the IEA, Institute of Economic Affairs, basically the Thatcherite think tank. There is rumour that he is going to be joining Reform, possibly as either the shadow foreign secretary or maybe some sort of foreign spokesman. At least that's what Steve Baker said he heard a little bird say on Talk. So I don't know how authoritative that necessarily is, but Steve Baker does seem to know everyone, given he runs a podcast now.
Grinding the spice, mate. Grinding the spice.
Yes, maybe it'll get him on Talk again as well. Who knows?
Well, who knows? But I think it is too early to speculate on that. But
yeah,
and also people do move on in their own ways at their own times. It's worth not reading too much.
2 months,
but it's also worth not being surprised.
Yeah. Well, 2 months seems rather quick to me, especially for. Well, someone was mentioning, I think the IEA in 2 or 3, it might be 2 years, have gone through 3 separate directors. And if that was a private, well, it is a private company, but if that was an actual business rather than a think tank, people would be panicked. But
well, I shall say nothing further other than to add that from what I hear from rumblings in the interior, yes, there are some things going on there.
Okay, well, there we go. Because I did used to read quite a lot of the IEA, but they've not been my favourite think tank for a couple of years now. But they seem very stuck in pre-2019 world, I suppose we'll call it. But we'll leave that there, I think, because there's one last thing that I want to go through, and that is finally they've taken their time, but we finally have a Reform Welsh manifesto, which apparently there've been other manifestos out from other parties, but I haven't read them. I don't know if Labour actually has theirs, but Reform do what they always do, which is have a big press conference. I will say and this does not reflect well on Reform, but I do try and be fair when I can. I did get an email last week basically saying, so the head of Reform Wales has been. They're basically looking for people to fill bums on seats for this, because obviously it's no, it's Wednesday. No, it is Thursday. Is it Thursday?
Yeah, it is Thursday.
It is Thursday, yes. We always record Thursday. What am I talking about? But it's Thursday in the morning at 11 a.m. Obviously, a lot of people work, but there was an email thrown out of, we sold like less than half the seats and there's less than a week to go here. To be fair to them, they did, I believe, end up selling 700 odd seats out of 800. So they did quite well. Well, very well, actually, for that. But I did find that quite funny. And as I say, they have done the big launch with all the questions. And Nigel Farage, as we always say, introduced it, let Dan Thomas, the Reform Wales leader, take the reins of announcing everything, which I've come to sort of realise that Nigel Farage is clearly getting all the others to shadow him and almost copy him in his, not necessarily mannerisms, but how he deals with the media. That certainly seems. It's always why he's at the table, say, even with Richard Tice, who he seems most friendly with, possibly Zia Yusuf, actually. So it's just an interesting thing that I've taken from that. You're always going to see Farage and other. They even ask him, like, should I answer this question as well? Which is, it really doesn't help the I have a team together.
Well,
does it?
Okay. On that one, I've probably mentioned this before, but we are accredited press with Reform, or at least we used to be. I've not heard anything from them in a while, but when they wheeled out
David Bull,
yeah, and Nigel seemed to get annoyed that I was not talking to him.
Yeah.
I was talking to David because this was David's day, and I know him. I've been on his show, and I was looking at him and talking to him, and the camera could hear both of us, but could only see Nigel.
Yeah.
So he ended up there, stuck like a lemon. I think, probably how he felt, and then he cut me off because I was asking David. Some people have said things have been too centrally led. I was representing, journalistically, members from branches who had said the same thing to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And no one else asked that question at all, and everyone else directed their questions to Nigel, but he doesn't always like it when...
No. It does seem to have got better in that instead of Nigel on a lectern and who is just introduced sat behind, who shouldn't be asked questions... They're together on a table, so there does seem to be improvement there. And Dan Thomas did take quite a few questions himself, but anyway,
well,
I think
I'm very glad to hear that.
Yes, but I think it's worth going through. I've got a little Twitter thread up of their top 10 points, and I have to say, as I would say this, I'm a big Reform fan, but I do like all of these. So,
well, would you care to run us through the top 3 or top 5?
We'll do a top 5. So. Prioritise the Welsh people by ending migrant hotel use, redirecting overseas aid to Wales, cutting DEI roles, and basing public policy on biological sex. It's all, and get rid of woke. Which, if there is a sort of basis for what the main Labour Party have been basing all their woke DEI stuff off, it's definitely been Wales. Even like coal mine museums, I should say, have had his DEI stuff that we've had to throw, and I've covered it on the channel before. So hopefully you get less of that and more of just his actual history. Oh look, there. I think Cardiff Port ended up having quite a few ethnic minorities there because you tend to get them at ports, but in the coal mines, not necessarily so much. Next one's quite a big one. They want to cut income tax by 1p in the pound by 2030. They want to cap council tax rises, introduce no new devolved taxes. They want to streamline quangos and drive growth through a dedicated minister for industry. Which you get this a lot, especially from the right wing, where there's a lot of right wingers who just want almost anarcho-capitalism, or just let industry do what it wants. But I don't think we really live in a world, and I certainly don't think we can get to a world without that's more like anarcho-capitalism without some direction for industry, especially when our defense capabilities are so bad, and especially when steel keeps nearly threatening to die out here. But the tax stuff, all stuff we like to hear, really, isn't it? But again, I think, well, you certainly mentioned it beforehand, councils that they've already had haven't really managed to do an awful lot of good when it comes to not raising tax. But to be fair to them, on average, reform councils do have the lowest average increase in council tax. So credit where it's due there, but there are also those rogue councils with the leaflets saying, well, cut your taxes. Didn't happen.
Still an increase, though. They promised to decrease it.
Yep.
But then they got into power and found out that governing was difficult, and we mentioned that point before.
Yes. It's difficult, and also councils are odd in that they have an awful lot of power in some places, but not an awful lot of power in areas that may matter, especially when it comes to the main problem. Obviously, is the SEND type things.
Well, so that's another theme that reform was riffing on not too long ago.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah,
they certainly were, and I'm trying to decide whether I think it's more of a gimmick or more of a genuine, commitment. I don't think they have a coherent plan yet for how they would deal with that.
No, I think the funny thing is that of all the devolved powers, Wales is actually dealing with the send problem the best. I don't know the details of it though. It's just something that I've kind of read on Twitter. Here's a Substack on it, load of graphs. I'm kind of trusting that, but that's not necessarily a good reason.
It's rather interesting, actually, because the last press conference I went to from Reform, it was Richard Tice announcing that one.
Yes, yeah. Tice is
one
of the
ones for that. It would have been David Bull,
because he's yes. Well, yeah, you'd think he's more related to health, but they still don't have a shadow health secretary or a health spokesman. I do enjoy the little meme of we have a shadow cabinet, but journalistic integrity, clarification, they're just spokesmen. His Majesty's opposition is the shadow cabinet, I'm afraid, but that could change even next year.
It could, and you never know, given that they want to reform quite a lot of things under the name. It might not be His Majesty's official opposition.
Oh, they wouldn't change that, would they?
I don't know.
I hope not. I want to keep a lot of the monarchy, nonsense. But oh well.
Well, it's this kind of nonsense that it's like the kind of nonsense you have within family traditions, isn't it? And that's kind of the way this whole country works. That's exactly what you would do. And I imagine they would respect it, but I can't imagine the press.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, the Windsors are they have their own problems with Andrew, obviously, but that's a different topic that I will park to the side for now, because we may as well go into point 3: reduce NHS waiting lists, end corridor care, which I definitely have experience of that. My girlfriend, when she's been in hospital, has been literally in a storage cupboard in a bed. Stuff like this has happened. Her mum's ended up in the corridor for hours at a time when she needs a bed due to complications you would expect her to be in a bed for. I will put it that way, but there we go. Strengthen accountability in health boards, improve GP access, and reform NHS dentistry. NHS dentistry in Wales is another one. My girlfriend used to be an apprentice dental nurse, sorry. And yes, NHS dentistry is horrendous. However, I have private dentistry with a subscription model, and it's only about £15 a month. But obviously not everyone can afford that, and obviously the NHS dentistry is one of those weird ones where it used to be really common, but everyone knew it was quite bad. And then, was it Thatcher who privatised it? And almost overnight it just improved.
So
it's an interesting...
It's not an expertise for me, that one, but certainly, yes, this issue of corridor care, well, you're putting them somewhere because you've got to have somewhere to put them, and you don't have anywhere to put them. Now, this really is not, what it is a structural issue. it's not an issue of individual people not caring. That much is certain, but it is a very visible symptom of the problem that we have. We have too many people who require access to medical services. We also have too many people who perhaps go to the hospital and maybe go to A&E or whatever when they actually don't need to.
I've seen that plenty of times. Yeah.
So, and sometimes your friends do this to you when, like me, you have seizures, and they're just like, because the thing is, nobody wants to be that guy who didn't call the ambulance.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
So you end up with this excess. And what I think we need is better and ideally more digital access to triage services. But the way the system has responded there is that it's trying to do everything via triage now. I have got 3 wounds on my left foot.
Oh.
2 of them are very obvious but don't hurt. The other one is less obvious, but it does hurt. I mean, a lot of pain. It's causing me balance issues. I have to walk in a certain way. I've self-referred to podiatry, and they've refused to see me. So, and what it comes down to is I sent them a photo of one of them, not actually the one I'm bothered about, but the one that's most obvious. Because the only way you can do it is you have to send them a photo. So they don't want a text-based description, they just want a photo.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll take the bit of it on that foot, which is my left big toe, that actually looks really bad, because the one that is really bad and the one that actually hurts
It's the other one.
is the other one, which if you just sent them a photo of that...
Yeah, it doesn't come across. Yeah, you can't see pain, can you? Yeah.
No, it would just look like a little bit of hard skin. Now, what's actually going on is there's something going on underneath that hard skin. But if you'll only accept communication from me in terms of triage and diagnosis, or initial diagnosis, through a photo, then the thing that's actually hurting me, I can't show you in any way that is not. And even after that, I showed them the fungal infection on the big toe, and they just said, "Oh, here's a leaflet on how to care for your feet properly."
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's what happens. That's what happens, and other problems with triage. A friend of mine was kind and referred me to a service that would look at some of my mental health and all that kind of thing. Do you know what they came back with? Oh, you might be drinking too much. Here's a leaflet on how to not drink too much. Right. I don't actually drink too much, but Yeah, no,
it's the typical thing. I mean, to be fair, I've had good experience. The one time I went to A&E for one of my own injuries, I sprained my ankle at football, left it alone overnight, went in the next morning. It was quite funny. Because I had 111 it. They said, yeah, go in. Explained that to them. I've been 111s. Like, okay, that's good. Right, we'll see you. They saw me in I was in and out in an hour and a half, which is very good, especially for a sprained ankle, which was a football injury. But my dad did say to me, because he was there with me, what did you say happened? And I said, well, I said it was a football injury. He said, oh, don't say that. Say you ran into a burning house saving a baby, because then you get looked at quicker. But I didn't end up having to do that, luckily. But then I've been in A&E with my girlfriend for, from 8 o'clock in the evening to 4 o'clock in the morning, and we don't get seen by anyone. It's just, we're going to have to go because I've got work and I can't leave you here. We know what they're going to say anyway. Just have bed rest and take pills, which is what she did. And then 2 days later, she was fine, but also there could be worse underlying causes that have been completely missed now. But I will say, just so we can move ourselves along, I will probably have first-hand experience of what a reformed government NHS is going to end up like. And I do want to say, I think the worst hospital in Britain is not too far away from me, and I have been there a few times, not for anything I need. And if that improves, I will be reporting on that. Because if Reform manage to improve that hospital, that's going to at least prove that they can be trusted with the NHS. But I will
it
say,
won't happen for at least 3 years.
No, it won't. But I hope to be doing this for another 3 years. So, but I will also say, when he was asked about this, Nigel Farage did say he was open to other funding models because obviously the NHS isn't actually working particularly well. He even cited Dr. David Bull, the chairman, as someone who obviously has an idea as to how hospitals work, how they can be improved, given he was a GP, even though his main experience is obviously in television. But there we go. So yes,
well, he was a medical journalist for 20
was.
years, I believe, something like that. It was only been intelligent for about 3 or 4 years, but before that, he was in medical journalism for quite some time.
Well, I think before that he was hosting Most Haunted, which he absolutely hates bringing up, but it is how I remember
that's
him.
right. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. It is.
The problem is that I used to watch that with my sister, so that is how I remember him, unfortunately, for him. So I'm definitely going to mention that should I ever meet him, and I don't care if it annoys him.
Well, there we are. You see, now we've all got things we've done in our past that do not necessarily align with where we be aiming just now. But that's partly because we've already been there and done that.
Yes. Yes. So I'll move on to point 4. This is another top pick. They're going to scrap 20-mile-per-hour limits, which, by the way, I've never even seen police follow, so that'd be a good one. I also have to say, actually, recently I have noticed the 120-mile-per-hour speed camera near me recently changed to 30 miles an hour, so I think enough people complained about that, because it was ridiculous. Go from 60 mile an hour down to 20, back up to 40, and the speed camera's at the 20. So they changed it to 30, which is still probably too low, but I'm not even sure why it's 30 there. It doesn't actually pass any residential houses, but there are quite a few in and out industrial estate roads.
Well,
maybe it's that.
So the main road, the street a couple of corners along from mine, has just become 20. This is not in Wales. This is in Sheffield, but that's just become 20. And I've certainly seen cop cars going along it at 30 at least. And there are no cameras to enforce it. Again, it just seems like another of those council things like, hey, we should make this 20. It is a busy road. But really, it's not going to make any difference. And I think sometimes people make these changes because they just, they want to be seen to have done something, which would be very Starmerite, I suppose. And this is it was a Labour-controlled council. I think it's now under no overall control, but there's a lot of that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, I can imagine. But it's still, transport seems to be their focus, and it seems to very much be motorists. So they want to build an M4 relief road, they want to ban road charging, they want to upgrade major roads, including the A55, which is the one that goes through North Wales, and expand rail capacity. So there's a bit of public transport there. And Welsh trains, for those of you who don't know, there's not many. And the one that goes through North Wales also does go through South Wales, but it has to go through an awful lot of England to do that. So you go from Holyhead, you go all the way across North Wales to Chester. You then go south through Shrewsbury and places like that until you end up in Newport. And then you go all the way across to Carmarthen through Swansea and Cardiff and places like that. So that's typically how the rail works in in Wales. So expanding rail capacity, not necessarily the worst thing ever, but nobody lives in mid Wales, so what's the point, on the other hand? But maybe it's focusing on the areas where people actually live, like Wrexham. But there we go.
Well, maybe they will put something out there about, because the people who do live in mid-South Wales are typically the ones who actually speak Welsh.
That's true,
I don't know if they have a policy. Look what happened to the DUP and Sinn Féin over we want an Irish Language Act. And speaking as a linguist, yeah, good with me, but not with them. Well, not with the DUP anyway. I wonder what would happen with Plaid if... this is the thing. Every time I go to Wales, because I'm a linguist, I want to learn a new word, at least one new word, or at least one other way in which the language works. So, because I've driven there, and I only ever really drive there, I only take the train there.
Like most people, yeah.
Yeah, well, so I know the word araf, slow.
Hmm.
And then you see on the road, written onto the road, you see Ravach Nauer, slow down now.
Slow down, yeah. Yeah.
But what I've derived from that, because I've deliberately not tried to learn the language as such, I've tried to derive, is that Ravach, okay, so that is an infinitive that is also being used as an imperative, just as you would see in Germanic languages. I'm just working it out as I go along. I would personally love to see the Welsh language given greater status. I have known people whose first language is Welsh. I have also known people whose first language is actually English, or at least dual, who just switch to Welsh when you come in and they can tell that you're English because they want to write you off.
Yeah,
and then I speak Dutch to them and suggest that perhaps it's not that funny. It's not that short.
my girlfriend likes people who do that though, because she does understand Welsh and will just start speaking Welsh as well.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. I mean, Dutch people, I will start speaking Dutch, and that's all perfectly fine. But there's no reason to do it deliberately, just to be.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth pointing out that his reform policy as well. Number 10 was maintaining the equality between Welsh and English, modernising cultural institutions, and politically biased public funding, and position Wales as a major sporting and cultural destination. So they're clearly aiming for the cultural landscape as well. And I mean, the rugby in Wales is obviously quite big. Football not so much, but obviously it got quite big with Wrexham. Obviously that got on Disney Plus thanks to Ryan Reynolds owning the damn thing. And yeah, everything, absolutely every government document comes to you in English and Welsh, despite the fact that 17%, less than a fifth of the country actually speak Welsh. But you know,
that's the thing. Did you? I don't know if you saw this famous case of the sign that somebody had made. And what they'd done is they'd sent it to a translation firm.
Yeah.
And the translation firm had also replied with something along the line, because they weren't available, had also replied along the lines in Welsh of, I'm not here right now, try me again some other time.
Out of office, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and they thought that was the actual
the
sign actually said.
Oh, no.
The Welsh version of it. I mean, I'm sure it's gone now.
You'd hope so, yeah. I mean, yeah, and well, getting everything translated to Welsh can be a bit of a cost, but despite the fact barely anyone speaks it, the only person I know who speaks it is my girlfriend, and she barely speaks it. She only says it to insult me. But everyone still wants it. I mean, I just a story from my branch. When we started campaigning, pretty much all our leaflets were only in English. And there were people in the branch saying that is going to kill our campaign. You do have to double-side it, and the other side has to be in Welsh. You do have to do that. Otherwise, people will just vote against you out of spite. So, obviously, they changed it. We won the last by-election. So, yeah, there's a weird cultural thing here, which I've very much learned after 3 years. I can take it or leave it. But then again, I lived in England for 25, 26 years, so I would take it or leave it.
All I would say about Welsh is that it is pretty much the end result of upending the Scrabble board, but they do, at least unlike Danish, actually bother to pronounce all of the letters. That is my final assessment.
Well, quite. I mean, just some final words on the manifesto they've launched. They're looking to scrap tourism tax, and we also have a weird 182-day rule. So for those who don't know, if you have a rental property that's self-catering, but you don't rent it out for 182 days or half the year, then then you are liable for council tax. However, if you do manage to rent out for more than those days, you get business tax, which is obviously less than council tax. So they're just going to say, if you run a rental business, it's a business, we'll make it a business tax. So it's just to encourage tourism rather than do the opposite, which a lot of Wales is run on tourism, believe it or not, because we don't mine coal anymore. We're all slate. So
well, no, I mean the last time I was in Wales, any significant amount of time, I was my ex and I rented out a nice, lovely cottage, and then spent most of the time walking up mountains. and doing various other things. The thing is, when I drive in Wales, you get to these kinds of roads which are like you
Just
can tell
big enough for a car.
Yeah, you can tell you're properly in Wales when the walls are made of stone, if there are any walls, and if you go off the end of it, you're going down the end of the mountain.
Yes,
so try not to do that. It's a little bit more challenging than driving in England, that much is certain.
Oh no, yeah, I've definitely noticed that. Obviously, I live in Wales now, but I used to be quite scared of going down country roads. But having lived here and driven for 3 years, I'm now just like, oh, this is like, you just stop. You remember where you need to reverse to if you see another car oncoming, and then I go over back to my parents' country roads. There, it's like I feel like you can fit 4 buses on this road. it's that big, so yeah, roads need upgrading here. That obviously was mentioned before. Just some last points. Net zero they're going against. Yeah, there's a weird thing. There's a famous offshore wind farm in Rhyl, and my girlfriend goes on about this all the time. That all actually powers Ireland. So they put the wind farm here to ruin the view from Rhyl, and that's not even to power Wales. That's to put interconnectors over to Ireland, so that's very annoying. But they're very much against onshore wind, which is still very popular according to polls, so I'd say that's a bit of a bad move, but that's what they're going with. Refocus subsidies. Just scrap them. And yes, have secure energy and go nuclear.
I don't really know what that means.
What's that? Scraps, refocus subsidies. Well, yeah. I think from the looks of it, and from what they said, it means we're moving subsidies away from renewables to put them into nuclear. That seems to be what that means, which I'm all for, but will take years. And then finally, there's stuff on farming, pro-farming stuff that details about neither of us will be able to really comment on because neither of us are farmers. I own horses, but that's not farming. Hopefully it makes hay cheaper is my commentary there.
Well, do you know what? You might end up with a photo of Nigel with a lamb.
Well, maybe. If Nigel wants a photo with my horses, he's more than welcome to, but it will mean walking down a very muddy, mile-long track. So there we go.
Not sure if he'll do that.
No, I'm not expecting it, really. It's very well hidden, though. So yes, I think though that's everything we have there. So it's not a bad manifesto, and it pretty much hits all the points you would expect from reform. Will it be enough for them to win? Well, time will only tell. I know one thing: I will be out canvassing for them over, well, pretty much the whole of the next few months, apart from 2 weeks when I'm in Canada. But there we go.
Oh, good view. But now, anyway, seriously, when you say you think they might win,
okay. Let me clarify. We have a very, very strange electoral system in Wales. Effectively, the way it works, it's kind of proportional representation, but you tally up all the votes in an area. Whoever wins gets a seat. You then halve that vote. Whoever's then top after that's been halved gets another seat, and it keeps going on like that. I think if you win subsequent seats, it doesn't quite go down by half after that. It goes down by like quarter or something.
But you're talking about the Senate.
Yes, talking about the Senate here. Yes.
But you see, this is the thing when you say that would they win, because of course you've got the Senate, but you've also got parliamentary seats and councils.
Are there parliamentary seats in? Are there parliamentary elections this time around?
I don't know if they're this time around.
I don't think so.
No, they're not this time around, but they do exist. Yeah. So in my case, was awarded you had. I don't remember the number now of actual MPs who are in Welsh parliamentary seats. So that I'm just saying is a different metric there, isn't it? You've got that versus councils versus the Senate.
Yes. Yes, I was specifically talking about the Senate there, given this was for a Senate manifesto, I suppose you'd say. Whether they'll win or not, actually, I probably shouldn't get too far ahead of myself there. I think they will. I think at the very least they will be second, so official opposition. But the way then, well, they could even win it. But then you have a rainbow coalition if there's enough Lib Dem, Plaid, Labour seats. You never know. So it's going to be an interesting one. But well, look forward to it. It'll be in May. So,
Well, yes,
there we go.
and so a lot of things will be rather seismic, I expect, after May. I think, as we were saying earlier, there may be a leadership move against the Prime Minister.
And possibly against the leader of the opposition.
Possibly indeed.
Yeah.
You never know. Neither of them are necessarily likely to do well, but you don't quite know. And the challenge for reform is no lesser, really, in lots of ways. Because, for example, let's just say they did do very well in Wales, but then buggered up in England. I don't think anyone would know what to do with that.
No. No, I certainly wouldn't know. No. No, reform's a weird one. You don't expect them to be particularly regional, but if they are going to be regional, you expect them to be very good in England. So
well, you would think so. As the Chinese like to say, may you live in interesting times, and I think certainly in the next few months we will.
I'm fed up of interesting times. Can we have some boring times, please?
Oh, my dear young fellow, you are getting old now, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I want a stable country with a growing economy. I literally don't know what that looks like. I don't have experience of it.
Well, I remember it, and it was nowhere near as amazing as you might think. But yes, certainly. When I look back at stuff from the 90s in particular, that kind of thing, was probably one of the better times that we had. Although, of course, the world was changing massively in ways that nobody had cottoned on to. The rise of the internet, all of this stuff, this happened then. And the world changed immensely, but nobody realized. Until about another decade later, and then people were like, "Oh dear, what have we done?"
Oh dear, yeah.
Oh dear, yeah.
Yes, well, I think with that we'll leave it there. That's a cheery note. So, thank you very much for coming along, Patrick.
Thank you very much for hosting me, Peter.
It's no problem. Right. With that, thank you all very much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.